Tort ni dia civil wrong, it's not a crime. For example, macam I bagi contoh yang I ada a group of lembu yang I bela kan. Okay, and then my neighbor is not feeling happy with the success of me membela lembu, and then dia telah meracun I punya lembu-lembu, kemudian menyebabkan kematian. Kematian lembu-lembu I menyebabkan kerugian kepada I, betul? Okay, so what have been done by my neighbor is not a crime, but it's a civil wrong. Okay, it's not a crime untuk dia dengki dengan kejayaan I, tapi it's a civil wrong. So that is basically what it means by what is covered under tort. Whatever that is not criminal and whatever that is not contractual, basically it covers under tort. For example, nuisance is also part of tort. Have you heard about nuisance? Nuisance ni contoh lah. Tapi dekat Malaysia jarang lah orang bring up nuisance. But actually if you want, you have the right to go against your neighbor, for example. Okay. For example, I duduk rumah kondominium ke apartment ke, tak kisahlah. Okay, and usually living in this kind of condo ataupun apartment, high rise punya building, you can easily hear tau jiran you menangis ke, menangis taklah, tipulah. Okay, menjerit, menyanyi, okay, main muzik, melompat-lompat, you boleh dengar. Okay, and so for example, if let's say my neighbor ada masalah, suka sangat berkaraoke sampai pukul 2-3 pagi, dia tak fikir pun apa jiran dia rasa, boleh tidur ke, tak boleh tidur ke. So because of the consistent nuisance, bising dengan nyanyi karaoke every night pukul 2-3 pagi, causing me tak boleh tidur. Because why? Anak-anak I yang kecil, yang baby tak boleh tidur. So I am tired of that. I cannot stand the nuisance anymore. I want to file a case against my neighbor in the court for nuisance. Pun boleh juga. Okay, it falls under tort as well. But you don't really do that, but well, in law you have the right to do that. Okay. So what is the concern under tort? Basically, first, to impose legal liabilities, and second, the consequent remedies, to grant consequent remedies to the party yang telah affected by the civil wrong conducted by a person. Okay. And liability under tort is not depending on contractual agreement. Contractual agreement is something like we have a contract. I pay you 50 ringgit and you give me your bicycle. Okay, that's the contract that we have established. If you fail to give your bicycle, I can sue you in court because I have paid you 50 ringgit but there's no bicycle being given to me. So it's a breach of contract. So liability of under tort is not depending on contractual agreement, because contractual agreement, maybe we can further explain that in case of failure of the other party to give me the bicycle, I can sue the other party for 100 ringgit, for example. Okay, but tort does not rely on any of the contractual agreement. We do not have to have a contract for us to sue another party under tort. Okay. And parties seeking compensation through tort law usually will ask for damages in monetary form. For example, kita accident on the road, my car got severely damaged, I need you to pay me the repair cost for my car, and you tak nak. Okay, so we can go to the court and I want to claim for that portion of money for me to repair my car yang you dah langgar. So that is the sample of damages in monetary form. Of course, there is also other forms of compensation that one can seek under tort. For example, injunction. Injunction ni, I do not want you to come close to me. I can bring matter to the court. I tell the court, hey court, hey judge, listen to my case. I am feeling nervous and afraid almost at all times because I feel like ada orang selalu ikut I wherever I go. And I know this this person is actually my ex-boyfriend, whom I fell in love 5 years ago during my study in UNITA. 5 years later, I am already graduated from UNITA. I am currently working with Bank Negara, for example. I have moved on and planning to get married, but somehow, I don't know, my ex keep on following me day and night. Okay? So I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. So I want to, of course, he doesn't hurt me, but he makes me feel uncomfortable. He didn't commit any crime yet, but I don't want him to follow me. So what I can do, I can go to the court and ask for injunction. So the court will injunct him to come close to me, at least in whatever range lah, 100-meter range ke, 200-meter range, the court can do that. That is injunction. Bahasa Melayu kita panggil injangsi, okay? Injangsi. Okay. What are the functions of tort law? To determine when a person has to pay compensation for harm wrongly caused, and to determine what conduct may be stopped or regulated by court's order. Contohnya macam tadi lah, injunction. Okay. So types of tort. Okay, types of tort, you can say false imprisonment, telah dikurung dengan salah. Kan? You kerja dengan satu syarikat tu kata you tak boleh balik rumah, you kena duduk je dekat kilang ni untuk dalam tempoh 72 jam. So is it right? It's not right. So you can go against your majikan under false imprisonment. Assault ni verbal punya abuse tau. Tapi dia tak mencederakan, is verbal. Macam verbal assault. Macam you kata orang tu bodoh, jahat. Macam jiran you bodoh, jahat. Menyusahkan. Perkataan-perkataan yang tak baik. Anak luar nikah. Perkataan-perkataan yang boleh membuatkan kita bergaduh. So that is assault. So because of the abusive words used against you, you suffer from depression, you suffer from anxiety, you lost confidence to walk out the door and pergi kedai because you feel ashamed all of your neighbors kan. So those are considered damages which you can claim for compensation in the court under tort. Okay, battery is physical. Dia ada juga elemen crime dekat battery ni. I punch your face, that is battery. Maybe not really as bad as you have to suffer 5 days in ICU, for example, but it is something that you are not, the action is something that you are not welcome. Sorry, action is something that you don't welcome, so that is something that you can go against in the court as well. Trespass. You can see that no trespass. Trespassers will be akan dihukum macam tu kan. So trespass. My land, my area, my house. No one has the right to step into my house until I give permission. Same goes to my land. Although tanah I tu kosong kering kontang, I tak letak pagar pun, it's my land. No one has the right to trespass my land. Not even to walk cross my land. What more, untuk bina bangunan ke, nak bina pondok pun sepatutnya tak boleh trespass because you have crossed into my border. My land is my border. So basically trespass is also under tort. Nuisance as what I have explained, when your neighbor gila karaoke pagi petang siang malam causing you cannot sleep. Okay, mengganggu. Okay. Other than that example, maybe you can say nuisance ni, for example, your neighbor is doing house renovation. House renovation dia poorly managed to the extent that debu-debu, habuk-habuk, batu, bata apa semua cross into your garage, your porch. Mungkin masuk dalam rumah you ataupun menyebabkan rumah you kotor. Okay, you are not happy with that. Nuisance, you consider it as nuisance. So you can also go to the court to claim against your neighbor punya action. Defamation is also under tort. Defamation is fitnah. Okay, orang Melayu selalu panggil saman malu. Actually, it's saman fitnah. Okay, and negligence ni kecuaian. So in this topic, we are going to further discuss about negligence. We are not going to discuss about other types of tort. Of course, if you want, you can always Google and switch, tengok dekat YouTube ke apa. But for this session, we are focusing on negligence because negligence always happen. Okay, so what is negligence? Negligence is a breach of a legal duty to take care which result in the plaintiff suffering from damage injury. So basically, you must have the legal duty to take care of something. Because when you fail to take care, you have breached your legal duty to take care. That breach have resulted in other party suffering from damage ataupun injury. That party is the plaintiff lah. Okay. So breach of a legal duty to take care which result in the plaintiff suffering from damage or injury. So if there's a breach of a legal duty to take care, but it did not result in any suffering of any other person, does that constitute a negligence? The answer is no. Okay. So what are the elements of negligence? You must have duty to take care. You must establish there's a breach to that duty. That breach must have caused injury, and that injury has caused the plaintiff to and then the damage was the damage is caused by the breach, and that damage is reasonably foreseeable. So first, defendant owed a duty to plaintiff, a duty of care. Okay, and then the defendant has breached that duty, and then because of the breach, it has caused damage to plaintiff, and the damage is something that was reasonably foreseeable. For example, you jalan-jalan dekat shopping complex, okay? Jalan-jalan dekat shopping complex, and then ada kawasan berlaku kebocoran, okay? Air bocor daripada atap ataupun ceiling at certain floor lah. And then there's no action taken by the management. Bocor air dekat situ, menitik-nitik, lantai tu jadi basah, causing the floor to be slippery. And as a customer who goes to the shopping mall, we didn't realize that the floor is wet with water, and then we walk on the wet floor, slippery floor, and we fell down. So in that situation, who should be at negligence? Is the management of the shopping mall. Okay, so the shopping mall basically has the duty of care to make sure the floor is not wet, it's not slippery. That's why they have to hire cleaner. Okay, and then they have breached the duty, that is, they didn't take any action to manage the slippery floor. Okay, because of that breach, we fell down. We walked to the shopping mall, and then we fell down at the slippery floor. And is it foreseeable that the customer can fall down because of the slippery floor? Yes, it's reasonably foreseeable. Kita semua tahu kalau je lantai licin, kita mungkin boleh jatuh. Tak kisahlah dekat rumah ke, kat kedai ke, kat sekolah. So that damage is reasonably foreseeable. So when we fell down, maybe it caused us injury, patah kaki. Patah kaki, we have to go to the hospital. Who has to pay for the hospital bill? We can claim against the shopping mall management. Okay, that's the example. Okay, so duty of care. What is duty of care? Duty of care is when a defendant owed a plaintiff a duty of care. It means that defendant was under an obligation to be careful towards plaintiff. For example, when we are driving on the highway, okay, we as a driver has an obligation to be careful towards other drivers, because if we are negligent during our driving, we may have caused injury to the other drivers. Okay, kita boleh menyebabkan kemalangan or accident. Okay, so a defendant owes a duty of care to the people who are in a relationship of proximity with him. If we are not in the relationship of proximity, maybe we do not owe any duty against the people. Okay, so what is relationship of proximity? Do we have to be physically close, okay, near to each other? No, not necessarily. relationship of proximity means that someone who was closely and directly affected by the defendant's action. Okay, whatever that I'm doing, my action will closely and directly affect the defendant. The plaintiff. So that is considered as relationship of proximity, and this relationship of proximity is actually referred to as neighbor principle. Neighbor principle ni laid down in the case of Donohue and Stevenson case. Can someone tell me what this case is all about? Okay, let's watch this video. Basically a summary of Donohue and Stevenson punya case, which I believe you already have the gist idea about what this case is all about. Okay. Can you hear the voice? Can you hear the audio of the video?
No, miss.
Let me try once again, ya.
No problem.
Boleh dengar tak?
No.
Can? Can you? Tak boleh
Cannot hear anything, miss.
Oh, cannot hear the voice.
Miss, I think you need to reshare your screen, but before after you click that share button, there's going to be a include audio on the left side.
Sekejap Oh, sorry. Ada suara tak? Tak ada
Tak ada, miss.
Okay, tak apa. Kejap Let me try. Kalau ni ada suara?
Tak dengar, Miss.
Tak dengar eh? How do I switch on the sound ya? Because I can hear from my
Share the link sajalah, Miss. Or
I give up lah. I don't know how to. Apa? I share the link dekat Teams so that you can have a look at it. Okay, tak apa. Let me explain okay. So Donohue and Stevenson. So this Donohue is a lady lah lady. Nama dia Mary Donohue. Dia pergi cafe minum beer, ginger beer dengan kawan dia yang belanja, okay. So when they were enjoying the ginger beer together with ice cream float, when she was pouring into the bowl, suddenly a snail came out from the bottle. So you bayangkan botol dia satu botol ginger beer, diorang dah minum maybe about half or 3/4 of the bottle. So when they were about to finish up the bottle by pouring whatever left, then suddenly a snail, decomposed snail, fall out from the bottle. So this has caused Mrs. Donohue feel dissatisfied lah. So dia rasa sakit perut. So she went to get treatment, and then she got gastroenteritis, and then she suffers shock. So she went to court to go against the manufacturer of the ginger beer. Okay, so the court held that the negligence is a tort. Okay, there was no contract between the parties. But why? Because is she not a customer? She is a customer to the bar. Okay, but she did not buy the drink. She was the drink was paid by her friend. So there's no contractual relationship between her and the manufacturer of the ginger beer. But however, this is considered as negligent under tort. So although there's no contractual relationship between the parties, it is still workable under tort. Okay, and then in this case as well, okay, and then second one is that the manufacturer have a duty of care towards the final customer. Tak kisahlah customer tu yang beli air ke ataupun orang yang belanja ke, but the duty of care is on the manufacturer to make sure that the end customer, the final customer, happy with the drinks. Okay, if it's not tasty pun, should not be any snail inside the drink lah. Okay, so and the neighbor principle. What is this neighbor principle all about? It says that you must not injure your neighbor. In whatever situation, you must not injure your neighbor. It could be physically injury atau mentally, emotionally injury. Okay? So you must love your neighbor. So that is what it means by neighbor principle. Alright. Okay, so this is under the neighbor principle. Actually, there's objective test. Okay, first the court will ask a hypothetical question to confirm. Okay, would a reasonable man who is in the same circumstances as the defendant foresee that his conduct will adversely affect the plaintiff? Put other person, okay, in the position of Stevenson tadi, manufacturer of the ginger beer tu, a reasonable man. Can this reasonable man foresee that his conduct ataupun his negligence will adversely affect the plaintiff, i.e. the end customer? So if let's say I am the reasonable man, if I'm the manufacturer and I didn't take hygiene into one of the important subject in my production, can I foresee that my final customer will face this kind of situation or injury? If the answer is yes, then plaintiff is a neighbor to the defendant. But if the answer of a reasonable man test is no, then it means that plaintiff is not a neighbor of the defendant. So if let's say the reasonable man test says that no, I also cannot foresee that this will adversely affect the defendant, the plaintiff. Then it means that there's no duty on the part of the defendant. But if the answer is yes, there's a duty of care on the part of the defendant. Okay, so it's fair lah. Okay, so in proving whether a defendant owe the duty to the plaintiff, there are three factors to be considered. The first one is there's a relationship of proximity between the plaintiff and the defendant, like I explained just now lah kan. Number two must be the damage is reasonably foreseeable. Kalau tak foreseeable, tak adalah. Okay, and then it is fair, just and reasonable for a duty of care to be imposed on the defendant. Contoh I bagi example yang dekat shopping complex tadi, di slippery punya floor, okay, slippery floor. Is it fair, just and reasonable for me to say that the defendant has a duty of care, for me to say that the shopping mall management has the duty of care towards me as the customer yang walk into the shopping complex. So if it's not fair and just and reasonable, then tak boleh lah. Tapi definitely I think it's fair, just and reasonable. Unless kalau you kata, oh management tu tak bersalah, tapi yang bersalah itu ialah bangunan sebelah. Manajemen bangunan sebelah, bukan manajemen bangunan tu. So that's not fair. Okay. Tapi if we say that the defendant ataupun the mall management has the duty of care towards the customer walking into the mall, then it's fair. So these three factors need to be considered lah. Okay. So relationship of proximity. So there must be sufficient closeness between the plaintiff and defendant. But sufficient closeness does not mean it has to be physically close. Your car must be close to my car. No, it doesn't work that way, okay? We can take example of this case. For example, Donohue and Stevenson. Maybe the manufacturer in one state and the end customer is in another state or maybe another country. But the customer still, the manufacturer still has the duty of care against towards the customer, although the customer is living in other state, because the final customer is drinking the beer manufactured by the manufacturer. So they might be staying in different area, but there is a relationship of proximity. It's important to note that the act of defendant or its omission could affect the plaintiff. Kalau tak affect, tak adalah. So omission ni apa? Act tindakan lah. Omission ialah kegagalan melakukan sesuatu. So omission in having a proper safety punya guidelines, for example. So that is omission. Gagal menyediakan proses yang selamat, gagal menyediakan suasana yang selamat, okay, conducive environment, safe environment. So that's omission. Okay, so case, okay, one case for example, okay, this case law court case ni something that you can't live without if you learn law subject, whether you like it or not. Usually we will back our facts, our points with example of cases. Okay, for example, in this case, let's discuss about Chris Angsana Sinran Berhad and Yu Sim Chuan. Okay, Chris Angsana is a developer. Okay, Yu Sim Chuan in this case is a bungalow owner. Okay, initially this case starts with Yu Sim Chuan going against Chris Angsana. Chris Angsana kalah case, and then Chris Angsana filed an appeal, okay, rayuan. That's why you can see the name here is Chris Angsana melawan Yu Sim Chuan. By right, who is filing against that party, the name should be in front, plaintiff should be in front. But since this case has went to appeal, so dia dah jadi kebalik. Okay. So Chris Angsana is the developer, Yu Sim Chuan is a bungalow owner. So the developer ni dia bina 20-story condominium near the bungalow. Okay. So terlalu seronok developing a new developed condominium area. The developer has failed to take precautionary measure prior to the construction to ensure that neighbouring bungalow was not affected. So maybe the bungalow ni dah jadi retak, dah jadi tak stable because of the movement of the land, because of the failure on the part of the developer to take precautionary measure. So it caused damage the bungalow yang near to the development area. So in this case, the court held that developer is liable, that the bungalow is in physical proximity with the construction site. The developer's activities on the site could affect the bungalow. So in this case, the example is that physically they are also near to one another. And then because of the physical proximity with the construction, between the bungalow and the construction site, it affects the bungalow punya structure, which has caused damage. Okay. So that is relationship of proximity. Foreseeability of the harm is basically if the defendant can foresee that his action or his acts might cause injury to the plaintiff, and the defendant owed the plaintiff a duty of care. For example, in this case, Bohill and Young. Okay, Mr. Young ni is a motorcyclist. So when he was laju-laju bawa motor, he crashed with a car, causing the driver of the car severely injured and died. Okay, so this Miss Bohill, she lives near the accident area. So when and she is heavily pregnant, 8 months pregnant. So when she heard about the loud crash sound from her house, she walked into the accident area, okay, the accident site. At that point of time, the floor jalan dah penuh dengan darah of the of the driver and as well as the motorcyclist lah. Okay, darah banyak. So causing her to feel shock. Konon-kononnya lah. So dia rasa dia shock. So they got nervous because the area was bloody, full with pula. Very full with blood, okay? So after that, when she delivered her baby, she gave birth to a stillborn child. Anak dia meninggal, okay? Dia keluar, anak dia dah tak bernyawa lah. And she claimed that she suffered nervous shock after seeing the blood at the accident site. So she filed a case against this motorcyclist, Mr. Young, because she said that because of this motorcyclist bawa motor menyebabkan kemalangan, menyebabkan kawasan tu jadi berdarah, driver mati. So she went to the site, she got nervous and shocked, and then causing her to deliver a stillbirth baby. So the court held that Mr. Young did not owe Miss Bohill a duty of care because it was not foreseeable that she will deliver a stillborn child. And she was not in immediate danger of physical harm. So because she was not even part of the accident point, she went to the crime scene to see what happened, and then there's a blood and she got shocked. So the fact that she delivered a stillborn child is not foreseeable harm. And okay, next is fair, just, and reasonable. For policy reasons, sometimes the court may decide that it is not fair, just, and reasonable to impose a duty of care on a defendant. Okay, for example, where a defendant is a local authority or government department, imposing a duty of care may have negative social, economic, and political repercussion. Okay, next is on the breach of duty. So breach of duty ni, the test to prove breach of duty is a reasonable man test. Okay, would a reasonable man have acted as the defendant has done if the reasonable man was faced with the same circumstances as the defendant? Okay, who is a reasonable man? Someone is neither careless nor overly careful. Dia kena average person. Okay, tak boleh careless sangat. Kalau careless sangat, you are not reasonable anymore. Ataupun overly careful, macam you ada OCD ke, something like that, you are not reasonable anymore. So you must be at the reasonable ataupun average status lah, okay? The defendant will be judged against a person who possess the same skill as him. So if let's say the issue against me is, let's say, medical negligence. Say I am a doctor, I'm a surgeon, my patient died, so the family filed a medical negligence suit against me. So reasonable man tests have to be conducted. So dia kena ambil a person who possess the same skill as me, which is another surgeon, for example. So putting another surgeon in my situation, whether the other surgeon could have acted the same like I acted if he is in the same circumstance as me. Okay, that is what it means by reasonable man test. So in the case of Philip and Whiteley, in this case, the defendant was a jeweler. The plaintiff went to see him to have his ear pierced. Okay, nak tebuk tindik telinga, tebuk pula, tindik telinga, okay. So he performed the procedure according to normal procedure lah, basically as a what a jeweler can do lah. In a whitewash room, dip the instrument in disinfectant, pass them through a flame and place them under running water. Basically dah disinfect lah, okay. Dah disinfect dia punya equipment used to tindik telinga this customer called Philip. Okay. So the court held that the standard of care required from the defendant was of a skilled jeweler, not a medical practitioner. So it's unfair lah to compare with a medical practitioner. So you have to compare skilled jeweler and skilled jeweler. Okay, so he has not breached his duty of care towards the plaintiff. Okay, next we move on to standard or degree of care required. So standard or degree of care required ni, we have to look into magnitude of risk. Magnitude of risk is basically the riskier the consequences, the higher duty I have against ataupun towards the plaintiff. Okay, practicability of precaution, whether taking precaution is practicable or is not practicable. Okay, general and approved practice. In industry practice, whether the same practice has been practiced in the industry, throughout the industry, or other industry player has the good practice but my company has a poor practice, for example. So, and also social importance of the act of the defendant. Okay. So magnitude of risk, the degree of care required of the defendant must be weighed again the magnitude of risk or degree of risk created by the defendant's action. So if the probability of injury occurring is high, higher standard of care is required. Okay. Kerja yang melibatkan panjat bangunan tinggi-tinggi, for example, kan. So higher standard of care is required. Okay. In the case of Susan Chia and Maybank Finance, a break-in occurred in the strong room of the defendant's premise where safe deposit boxes were located. Burglars had tunneled their way underground to get into the strong room. Okay, so in this case, the court held that defendant is liable for the plaintiff loss of their valuables. Why? Because the defendant has failed to install advanced security system in their premises. Although the advanced security system has been easily available and in the market for the past 10 years before the incident occurred. So Maybank Finance in this case has failed to take precaution. Okay, failure of that has caused the strong room being break into. Similarly, higher standard of care is required if the defendant's action may cause a serious injury to the plaintiff. In the case of Paris and Stepney Borough Council, a piece of metal hit plaintiff's eye when he was working and causing him to become blind. The court held that the employer has had a duty to take reasonable care to ensure the safety of the working environment. So by right, kenalah bagi goggle ataupun penutup mata for the employee yang bekerja dalam yang berkaitan yang bahaya macam ni. Because if failure to do that, accident has caused the employee to lose his eyesight. Okay. Practicability of precaution. Okay, contohnya macam kes ni lah, berlaku banjir dalam satu kilang, for example. So bila berlaku banjir dalam kilang, plaintiff slipped and fell. So he contend that the employer ataupun kilang owner tu should have shut the factory down. So the court held that the risk of injury was insufficient to warrant the shutting down of the factory. It's not practicable lah for the factory to shut down. It's sufficient for the factory to just clean ataupun clearkan the wet floor. So it's too much lah to ask for the factory to shut down. So the risk of injury is low and it would be unfair to require the defendant to spend a lot of expense to reduce the risk by shutting down the factory. Okay, general and approved practice. Ni macam I explained just now. If the defendant's conduct was consistent with the standard practice in his industry, he can be said to have acted reasonably. However, a court may still find a defendant conduct to be negligent even if he merely followed the standard practice. Okay, so next is on damages. What is damages? Money awarded for a loss or an injury. So causation of damage. Once it is proven that the defendant had breached his duty, the plaintiff must prove a connection or causal link between the defendant's breach of duty and his injuries. So I patah kaki. I claim that it is due to the slippery floor of the shopping complex. Okay, I have to prove to the court that my broken leg is due to me being fell down due to the slippery floor. If I fail to prove, maybe masa I jatuh tu, kaki I tak patah pun. I just injured my tendon, for example. And then when I get home, I jatuh tangga rumah and baru kaki I patah. So I have to prove, because if I fail to prove, then I cannot link the damage, the injury that I suffer with the breach on the part of the shopping complex management. Okay. In other words, the defendant's conduct caused plaintiff damage. Kalau I jatuh, kaki I patah sebab jatuh tangga dekat rumah, lepas balik daripada shopping complex, the defendant's conduct did not cause the injury of me for having broken leg. Okay. So the test used is but for test. Okay. So contohnya macam dalam kes Barnett and Chelsea and Kensington Hospital. So in this case, 3 security guards who were on duty shared a poison tea. 20 minutes later, they began vomiting and went to the hospital. The defendant, i.e. the defendant in this case, okay. The doctor on duty tell to go home presuming it is not an emergency. The 3 men returned home. 9 hours after drinking the poison tea, one of the security guards died. The widow sued the hospital for failing to treat her husband. So what is the argument by the hospital? The court held that the hospital was not liable. The hospital did owe the man a duty of care to examine them, and failing to do so was a breach of duty. However, the victim's death was not the result of the breach, but the victim has been poisoned with arsenic, and even if he was diagnosed and treated by the hospital, he would still be dead. There was no link between the breach of duty by the hospital and the death of the victim. So the breach does not cause death of the victim. So fail to prove the causation of the damages. What if there are multiple causes that contributed to the plaintiff's injury? So the plaintiff is only required to prove that the defendant's breach was an important cause of the damage. The defendant is not liable if the plaintiff cannot prove that among the possible causes of the harm, the defendant's action was the cause. For example, in this Wiltshire and Essex Area Health Authority case, a junior doctor negligently administered an excessive amount of oxygen on a premature baby. It caused the baby to become blind. Okay, it is known that administering an excessive amount of oxygen on a premature baby can cause the baby to be blind, but there are also 5 other possible causes. So the court held that, as it was not proved that the blindness was caused by the failure to prevent excess oxygen being given to him, the defendant is not held liable. Okay, sebab ada banyak lagi sebab lain boleh menyebabkan buta, not necessarily because of the excess oxygen. Okay, remoteness of damage. A defendant is only liable if it is reasonably foreseeable that his conduct will result in some damage to the plaintiff. If the damage is remote, defendant is not liable. The test is whether a reasonable man could have foreseen the damage as a likely consequence of the defendant's action. Like in this case, Bradford and Robinson Rentals, defendant had asked the plaintiff to run an errand. The van used by the plaintiff did not have a heater, and the plaintiff suffered frostbite in consequence. So, court held that frostbite was a type of illness that was foreseeable as a consequence of exposure to cold weather. So, the defendant was liable. So, this is definitely not in Malaysia lah kan. Malaysia mana ada frostbite, mana ada salji pun. Okay. And eggshell skull rule. So, this eggshell skull rule, take your victim as you find them. So basically, if you hit one person on the head, you rasa you pukul orang tu sikit je, tak sepatutnya dia mati pun, but tiba-tiba dia mati because tumbukan you yang tak seberapa kuat tu. So would you have an excuse that orang lain kalau aku tumbuk macam ni takkan mati, tapi dia ni je mati? So is that a good defense? Unfortunately, eggshell skull rule will not allow you to have such defense. Okay? A tortfeasor must take his victim as he finds him. So you are taking the risk. Whoever you punch in his face, if you punch someone strong, you are lucky enough because he will not get injured. But if you punch someone yang memang weak inside, on the surface you nampak dia macam sama, but inside actually his skull is very rapuh, like an eggshell, and then you thought he will not severely injured by your moderate punch, but apparently he suffered very bad injury which caused him to die, so you have no excuse. Okay, so you can argue that plaintiff's injury would be less if the plaintiff did not have an unusually thin skull or a weak heart. So it's not an excuse. Okay, for example, in this case, Smith and Leach brain, due to the defendant's negligence, the plaintiff's husband was burned on the lip by a piece of molten metal. So because of the burn, he contracted cancer. So there are the cancerous growth due to that burn, which later caused his death. So the court held that the defendant is liable even though an ordinary healthy person would not have developed cancer in the same circumstances. Too bad, because your victim is very weak. So if you want to punch any other person, please ensure that he or she is not within this eggshell skull people. Okay, so well done people. We'll take a 5 minutes break, and then we'll continue with the second part of the tort law, and a quick question and answer, and I'll explain later on your assignment and group presentation. And before we end our session today, I'll take your attendance. Okay, so 15 minutes break. What is the time now? It is 3:40 lah, 3:38, 3:40 lah lebih kurang kan. So I'll see you guys back around 3:55. Okay, in the meantime, if you have any question, you can just post your question on the chat box. Okay, 15 minutes break. Thank you.
Miss, thank you.
Ke tak nak break ni? Okay, break. Okay, let's take a break. 15 minutes break.
Yes, miss.
Okay. Can we continue? Hello, hello. I nak ambil attendance
miss.
ni. Hi, I nak ambil attendance I'll call one by one. And then kalau you ada, you say hi. Okay. Unmute your mic and say hi. Alright. Saya nak ambil attendance. Aina Mardia binti Muhammad Sabri.
Hai Miss.
Hai. Aina dekat mana?
Puchong.
Puchong.
Selangor.
Memang asal Puchong lah Alright. Abdul Hafiz bin Yaakob. Ada? Tak ada Tak ada Alright. By the way, attendance kena berapa persen for you to be able to sit for exam?
70.
70. Alright.
Yeah.
Fawaz Syahir bin Muhammad Syahrir. Ada? Tak ada Kana Gaseturapati, anak lelaki Sundra Raju. Ada?
Saya Miss.
Mana
Miss boleh panggil saya
Okay.
Kana je.
Kana, okay. Kana, where are you Kana? Where are you at now?
I'm from JB. So,
So you
since we are
are-
studying online,
Okay.
I came back from Selangor. I was staying at a hostel
Mm-hmm.
at Damansara. So since we are studying online, I just go back.
So dekat JB lah ni. Which area of JB?
Johor Bahru, Skudai.
Okay, Skudai. I tahu lah Johor Bahru tu JB. Okay, Kasturi anak perempuan Murali. Ada tak? Tak ada Lisha Lini Priya.
Hi, madam.
Hi, how do I call you? Priya? Lisha? Lini?
Lisha.
Lisha.
Yeah.
You are from?
I'm from Gombak.
Gombak. So you're currently in Gombak lah.
Yeah.
Alright. Muhammad Akif Farizi.
Right here, miss.
Alright, Akif kat mana?
Stay at Puchong, miss.
Puchong. Dengan parents
Yes, miss.
Okay, thank you. Mohana Gauri. Ada tak? Mohana Gauri Supia.
Yes, miss.
Hi Mohana, where are you now?
I'm at Kuala Lumpur.
Kuala Lumpur. Alright,
Yes.
thank you. Muhammad Abdul Hadi.
Hi, Miss.
Hi. Hadi dekat mana?
Sepang, Miss.
Sepang dengan parents
Nope. Dengan aunty.
Oh, dengan aunty. Alright, right. Okay, Natasha Syazwani. Hai. Natasha dekat mana ni? Poor connection tak berapa jelas. It's okay. Nurul Izzah binti Abdul Aziz.
Yes, miss.
Izzah dekat mana?
Dekat Melaka.
Okay, Melaka kat mana?
Dekat Bandaraya Melaka.
Alright, Bandaraya Melaka. Pravina, anak perempuan Vigneswaran.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Pravina, dekat mana sekarang?
I can't hear you, madam.
Hello?
Yeah.
My connection is poor, is it?
Your connection fine, madam. Miss.
Oh, okay. My connection is fine, right? Okay. Okay, Pravina is here. How about Puguneswari? Do we have Puguneswari?
Hi, miss.
Hi. Where are you?
I'm from Negeri Sembilan.
Negeri Sembilan. So you are currently staying in Negeri Sembilan?
Yes, Seremban.
Oh, Seremban. Alright. Next is Putri Eli Zafira.
Yes,
Putri.
miss.
Oh, nama canggih ni. Putri Putri dekat mana ni?
Dekat PJ. Boleh panggil Ellie je.
Ellie Ellie. Alright. Thanks, Ellie. Shalini? Ada Shalini?
Madam, dia tadi ada, lepas tu dia cakap dia tak dengar apa yang madam cakap, so dia left and then dia cakap rejoin balik.
Okay, nanti kena salam kat dia.
Okay.
Okay, Sharwin Rose. Sharwin Rose, anak perempuan Pushpa Rajan. Ada? Tak ada Ada? Tak ada? Okay, tak ada. Stephen Kire Nyarko. Do I pronounce his name correctly? Stephen ada? Stephen tak ada Sweta, anak perempuan Ragunathan.
Yes, madam.
You're here?
Yeah.
Okay, you are staying, where are you staying at now?
I'm from JB, Skudai.
Oh, so you are staying in JP lah.
Yeah.
Alright, thank you. Tarani.
Yes, madam. I'm here.
How do I pronounce your name?
Tarini.
Tarini. Okay, Tarini. Where are you from, Tarini?
I'm from Rawang, madam.
Rawang. Alright. Tanisha Ko.
Yes, madam.
Tanisha, where are you from?
I'm from Stapa.
Oh, Stapa, near. Very near to my place. Which area of Stapa? Which part?
I'm staying near KL Festival.
Okay, Danau Kota area.
Yeah.
Okay. But don't go shopping,
No.
Okay, Utaya Sarvini. Tak ada Vanisha, anak perempuan Subramaniam. Tak ada Wan Muhammad Firdaus.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Firdaus kat mana ceria bunyinya tu?
Saya Kasim Kedah.
Oh, dekat Kedah ni?
Saya Kedah.
Oh, Kedah makan nasi kandar.
Boleh tahan lah.
Oh, boleh. Okay, Vinash. Vinash ada kan? Vinash ada.
Hi, miss.
Hi, Vinash, where are you at?
I'm from Sentul, miss.
Sentul, okay. Staying with your parents lah.
Yeah.
Alright, and your guest. Do I have your guest with me here? Your guest. Ada your guest tak? Tak ada
Miss. Sweta, just now you called Sherilyn Rose, right?
Correct.
Yeah. She say her mic is problem. She cannot answer.
Oh, okay. Your guest ada your guest? Your guest tak ada?
Hi, miss.
Ada? Yang hi siapa ni? Yang hi saya ni siapa? Your guest. Okay. Okay, hi your guest. You dekat mana?
I'm from Negeri Sembilan.
Oh, so you are currently at your Negeri Sembilan. Oh, Rembau.
Yes.
Okay. Rembau Most Wanted. Have you heard about that song? Okay, so ada tak nama yang I tak panggil? Tak ada 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have...
Miss,
Yes? Siapa itu?
Miss, you haven't called my name yet.
Pravin
Yeah.
Okay, kejap Pravin. Nama you seorang je dekat list yang satu lagi.
Yeah.
Right, kejap So I just want to confirm Abdul Hafiz is not here. Fawaz Syahir is not here. Kasturi is not here. Just in case you are here, bagi tahu Stephen is not here. Utaya Sarvini, Vanisha also is not here. Yang lain semua ada. Okay. Pravin. So you guys ni sebenarnya dah dalam tahun berapa?
Tahun kedua.
Tahun kedua untuk tempoh belajar berapa tahun? 3, 4 tahun?
3 tahun. Business admin 3 tahun.
So semua ni course yang sama lah, business admin lah.
Saya IT, Miss.
Siapa yang IT ni? Nak tengok sikit muka dia.
Saya.
Vinush.
Yeah.
Oh, you IT. Okay, so basically tak semualah course mate. So, different course. Or majority memang business punya students lah, except for Venus je. Okay, tadi Pravin. Kejap Pravin. Pravin, I have problem lah with the attendance. Sekejap Update student attendance. I cannot update your attendance. I'm not sure why. I'll check about your name later. Tapi don't worry, I know you are in my class. Okay, Pravin? Yang orang lain, I dah update. Alright, so basically, before I continue with the lecture, I would like to brief on the assignments, reflective paper, as well as the group presentation, okay? I'm not sure about your other subjects. How do you do with the presentation during this virtual classroom? But it's okay, we just go with whatever we have at the moment. It's 100% virtual this semester, this short semester, so we are going to do presentation via Microsoft Teams. Okay, is there any issue on your side with regard to that so far? No issue, right? Okay. Okay, basically, I'll share the slides on the due date with you guys via Microsoft Teams later, okay? So basically, your individual assignment will carry 20% marks. So it's the same question for every student, okay? 20%. The due is on 20th of February. Okay, that's the first thing on individual assignment. Secondly is 20% carry mark of group presentation. We will start the group presentation via Microsoft Teams on 20th of February as well. So on the 20th is the due for you to submit assignment. Also, 20th of February, hari apa? Kejap Also, we will start the group presentation on the 20th. Let me check. Okay, yes, then 20th is on Saturday, right? And then you will have 10% carry mark for reflective paper. It's also individual. You have to submit it by 27 February as well. Because this is a short sem, so I'm sorry, but everything is packed into 1 or 2 months, okay? And you will have your final exam starting from 13 March, if I'm not mistaken, okay? So for group presentation, I would like to have around one group. You should have around 4 to 5 maximum lah, okay, for group presentation. Is that fine, or is that okay, or would you like to have it like 3% ke 2% ke? Terpulang lah kepada you. Actually, I don't really mind lah, but I need you to WhatsApp me or drop me a text via this Microsoft team informing me who are in your group. So basically you decide yourself who you want to be in your group, and also let me check on the question, okay, on the topic. Okay, if you check on the, what do you call the system is NIEC virtual. Okay, if you check in that, you can see that there's a folder, coursework folder prepared by Miss Farah tau. Okay, in that file you can see the group presentation punya question lah basically. Okay, so the requirements are all there. Okay, there are 4 questions which you can choose which one you want to do the presentation. The first one is on the importance of arbitration clause in the contract. Second one is whether a minor can enter into an employment contract. Third one is liability in negligence for nervous shock. And the fourth one is right of part-time workers under Malaysian law. I am fine if you want to go beyond this topic. It means that you want to present on something else, but as long as it's within our course plan for this business law subject, then I'm okay. But you just have to inform me what is your topic area that you and your group have decided to choose. But if you are lazy to think about something else, it's fine for you just to choose either one of this topic. Okay, is that clear for now?
Yes, Miss.
Sorry, madam.
Ah.
Sorry. For the case study, how many people in group?
Case study is the individual assignment.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Miss.
Welcome.
Yes,
Kejap. Let me double check on that. Okay, sorry. Okay, for the assignment, maximum 2 people per group. It's either one individual ataupun 2 orang. That's the maximum. Okay. Tapi kalau you malas, you bagi tahu I siap-siap, ma'am, I plan to do it 3 people in a group. Macam tu. I'm fine, I'm okay as long as you submit your assignment lah. But please lah, written assignment janganlah 5 orang satu group. I think maximum 3 people lah. 1 or 2 I'm okay, or 3 lah maximum. I can go with that. But more than that, please not. And then that is on written assignment, the case study. 3 people maximum. Best is 1 or 2 people. Okay, 1, 2, or 3. As for the group assignment, as for the group presentation is about 4 to 5 people per group. As I mentioned just now, the question or the options of topic, there are 4 prepared by Ms. Farah. If you want to go beyond that, something else which you find more interesting, more relevant to your course, as long as it's within the course plan for this business law subject, I'm okay. You just have to inform me as soon as possible. Maybe I should give you until next Saturday for you to text me name for your your team members' name for assignment as well as group presentation. Okay, for example, macam siapa, contohnya macam Vinosh kan, nanti Vinosh text me cakap, ma'am, I'll take this topic for group presentation. Members in my groups are siapa. Okay, as for the assignment, who are in your group, you mention as well. Okay, so mention clearly, is it for assignment or is it for group presentation? Is for group presentation, what is the topic and who are your team members? Okay. Alright. Clear, I think it's clear on that. So written assignment case study due date is on 20th. Presentation we will start on 20th. So I think how long would you prefer to present per group? Tak payah panjang sangat lah kot. I think 15 minutes, 20 minutes, is it sufficient? Ke you suka cakap banyak?
I think that's sufficient. Yes.
Maximum we set 20 lah. 20 minutes kalau semua orang boleh settle cepat, so we can finish the presentation cepat. Okay, and then if towards the end, if there's any other topics and unclear to you that you want me to cover, to explain further, then we can do that. So we can save some time, okay? So group presentation, important for you to note that every participant have to talk, have to deliver the presentation. So you have to divide your tasks equally lah, okay? You have to prepare material, contohnya PowerPoint, or if you have Prezi ke whatever you want to show, up to you, as long as you have the material. It is best if you can prepare it in advance so that your friend can have a look at it before you present, or if not, it's okay, you can just share your screen during the presentation and share the slide after the presentation so that your friends can refer and study about the same. Okay, and yeah, that's all. Presentation will be on Microsoft Teams. These topics or questions are available on the virtual system that you have, Uni EC virtual, so you can check on that. I'll post the same in this Microsoft Teams punya forum later. Okay, any questions so far? Any confusion, anything unclear? Oh yeah, there's another one. Another one is the reflective paper. So this reflective paper ni is basically your number 2 assignment lah. So the assignment number 1 just now is either you individual ataupun with a partner ataupun maximum 3 people I will allow. This assignment number 2 will only carry 10%. This one is definitely individual assignment. You have to write a reflective paper on what you have learned in business law class from week 1 until week 4. That's all. So tak panjang pun, 1.5 page using Times New Roman font 12, 1.5 spacing. The reflective paper due date is on 27th February 2021. Okay, clear?
Miss,
So
sorry.
yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I have a question. Alright. For the assignment, can we show to you maybe the draft?
Boleh?
Alright.
Before you want to submit finally, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Boleh,
Yeah,
boleh, but make sure you
Okay,
you submit tu sebelum due date lah. Okay.
Okay, Miss.
Your attendance, actually I just take it as my responsibility to make sure you students attend the class. Okay, but in case you have any urgency or emergency that do not allow you to attend the class, inform me as soon as possible. Best is before the class, or if you didn't get the chance to inform me before the class, as soon as the class finish, inform me as soon as possible. Okay, because I do not want to be the reason why you cannot sit for your final exam, but you also have the responsibility to make sure that you attend the class, because yeah, if you want to sit for the final exam, you have to make sure that you attend the class. Okay, because it's Sharin Rose, do you have any question? No, sebab tangan dia tunjuk tangan macam angkat tangan. Okay, any question for the past topics that we have discussed and covered? No question? Yes? No?
No, madam.
Alright. If there's no question, I'll continue with topic, the second part of the tort law. Okay. So basically topic 3 lah. topic 3, I will just use the slides prepared by Ms. Farah. Basically, at this point of time, maybe you don't really see how relevant is this business law subject to your working environment in the future. But it's okay, although it's hard to relate or it's hard to digest, just take it as something new that maybe you can enjoy knowing about a new information. That's it. Okay? Since this topic has been covered by Ms. Farah, if you have any question, or do you have any question ataupun area that you want me to zoom in instead of just going one by one, or maybe you have one specific area that you really need to understand better, or you prefer me to go from start to the end? Macam mana? Because why? If not, it's like I'm going to repeat another lecture tau on the same topic. You tak termuntah ke nak dengar kan? Itu je my concern. If you don't mind listening to the same thing, I'm fine.
It's okay, Miss, because it's increase more our knowledge. Because before this just like fast pace kan.
Okay, fast pace. Okay. So if I'm going too slow or too fast, just bagi tahu Alright. I'll share with you the screen. Okay, you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Nampak?
Yes, Miss. Yes.
Boleh Okay, so the second part of the law of tort ataupun tort law ni, we will start with.
Miss, is it
Yes?
recording? The recording session, is it recorded? Yes.
I am not quite sure.
Oh, okay, I think yes.
Okay. Alright. So topic 3 or second part of the tort law will touch first on vicarious liability. Okay, what is vicarious liability? In short, is basically you as an employer, you don't think that you have been negligent, which caused damage or injured the plaintiff. However, unfortunately, you have a staff who has caused the injury ataupun damage on the plaintiff. So as an employer, you have no choice, but you have to be vicariously liable for the breach of duty of care which have been committed by your employee. So you majikan, you ada staff you yang sebenarnya dah menyebabkan kecederaan ataupun kerugian terhadap plaintiff. You nak kata tak boleh, you tak nak bertanggungjawab? Tak boleh sebab you majikan. Tapi adakah dalam semua situasi? Tidak semestinya dalam semua situasi lah. Okay. So a plaintiff who sues in negligence may name the alleged tortfeasor. Tortfeasor is orang yang telah menyebabkan, yang telah membuat civil wrong lah in tort, okay? May name the alleged tortfeasor's employer as a co-defendant. So for example, saya sebagai employee syarikat A, kerja saya sebagai driver, okay? Memandu lori untuk deliver barang dekat mana-mana kedai lah, okay, for example. So while driving, delivering the goods of the company to the retailer, saya telah cuai dalam pemanduan saya. I drove recklessly, which has caused accident. Kereta depan saya langgar, kereta tu teruk. Okay, so kereta tu sekarang ni owner dia nak tuntut kerugian. So dia boleh sue negligent atau kecuaian saya dalam memandu against saya dan juga employer saya, majikan saya sebagai co-defendant. Okay, so defendant can be 1, can be 2, can be 3. Itu pulang lah. You nak name berapa orang. Okay? Okay, so vicarious liability is an exception to the principle that a person should not be held liable in absence of fault of his own. So in general principle is that I should not be held liable for any fault not done by me. Okay, saya hanya akan bertanggungjawab ke atas kesalahan yang dilakukan oleh saya. Kalau adik saya yang buat salah, dia lah yang kena bertanggungjawab. For example, okay, if my husband has been negligent which cause injury to you, I should not be liable or responsible. It's my husband's liability and responsibility. Okay, so that's the general rule. However, for vicarious liability, it's an exception to that general rule. Okay, clear? So this is because the principle of vicarious liability says that an employer is liable for the tort committed by his employee in the course of employment. So taking an example like me driving the lorry to deliver the goods of the company, that situation is an example. I am in the course of employment. I was driving the lorry untuk pergi deliver goods. But what if it's already out of working hour, dah malam, tapi I masih bawa lori tu, I tak pulang lori tu, I pergi minum kat kedai mamak lepak dengan member. Unfortunately, I langgar motor, orang yang bawa motor tu mati. So, should my majikan, my employer be vicariously liable as well? The answer is no, because my action at that point of time, pergi lepak kedai mamak dengan member, is not in the course of employment. Although I was driving a lorry, but it's my fault for not returning the lorry dekat office, for example, okay? And I was not paid untuk bawa lori pergi kedai mamak. I was only paid to drive the lorry to deliver goods. So that's the different, if let's say you have to explain what does it mean by the course of employment, okay? So the employer need not be at fault and he is vicarious liable due to his position as the employer. He is not, okay? He is not, okay? So the concept of vicarious liability, first, worker is negligent, okay? Second, someone is injured. Kalau negligent je but no one injured, nothing happened, okay? And then employer is vicariously liable. So that's the concept, okay? So why? If you are the majikan, maybe you feel frustrated, oh my god, I have to spend a lot of money to pay to this kind of negligent cost by my staff, kan? But to be fair, there are reasons, okay, behind this vicarious liability principle. First, that the employer has the financial means to bear the cost of compensating the tort victims. For example, if he or she is badly injured, so he claimed for damages like 100,000 ringgit. As an individual, and as an employee, a lorry driver like me, do I have that sum of money to pay 100,000 to the plaintiff? Definitely I don't. Until and unless I pergi merompak ke, so it's not right. So that's why employer has to bear the vicarious liability punya financial costs. Okay. Second, an employer that has been found liable for an employee's tort will take measures to increase the standards of safety. So, punishing me alone might not be enough. They have to drag together the employer so that the employer take note that you have to make sure next time there'll be no similar case happening in your company again. Macam tu lebih kurang. Okay. And the question of who has the benefit of insurance. Usually, insurance coverage will cover the company lah. Kalau business insurance coverage will cover business, dia ada commercial general CGL liability. Usually business would have insurance lah, but it depends on the nature of the business lah. So usually business has been covered by insurance. Individual unlikely to have insurance. That is why it's fair for the employer to have this vicarious liability principle against them. Okay. So there are requirements to impose vicarious liability. Tak bolehlah sesuka hati je nak impose, kan. First, there must be wrongful act. The court must decide whether a tort has been committed. Okay. If it's confirmed that the tort has been committed, then you have to establish there must be a special relationship between the one committed the wrongful act and employer. So kalau you je as employee, you mengaku she is my employer, tapi your employer tak mengaku pun you adalah employee dia. So how? So you have to prove lah with your employment contract, for example, that you at that time of incident happened, you were driving a lorry belongs to the company. So you have to prove the special relationship between the employer and employee. And the third one is the cost of employment. The tort must be committed within the cost of employment. Like I mentioned just now, kalau you pergi bawa lori syarikat tapi pergi minum kedai mamak, that can be argued as not within the cost of employment. Okay. So who is an employee? An employee is only vicariously liable for the negligence. Sorry, an employer is only vicariously liable for the negligence that is committed by his employee under a contract of service. So this is the tricky part. Dia ada dua words tau. One is contract of service. Another one is contract for service. So for and of is two different things. Contract of service is saya jadi pekerja lah. Okay, majikan saya bekerja, saya berkhidmat bersama syarikat tersebut. Okay. Contract for service, I actually offer my service for that particular company. I give you an example in this situation. For service ni usually dia ni sebenarnya adalah independent contractor. For example, there's a huge development nak membina kondominium for example. So the main contractor appointed a subcontractor untuk maybe buat kerja-kerja untuk susun batu lah. Contoh je lah contoh, okay. So this independent contractor ataupun this subcontractor is not under a contract of service. They are under a contract for service. So they have to manage their own risk. They have to have their own guidelines and SOP that they have to follow. Okay, so that's the difference between contract of service is employee and contract for service is more like independent contractor. So if you are confused, okay, there are 3 tests which can be used by the court to precisely determine the nature of the relationship between an employer and his employee. Okay, first, the court will use control test. This control test is basically to explain how much of control an employer have against the employee. Okay, so kalau memang dia kata saya lah yang bayar gaji, cuti dia saya yang approve, allowance dia saya yang bayar, dia memang kerja clock in pukul 8 pagi balik pukul 5 petang, so dia memang kena ikut apa direction instruction bos atau majikan for every day punya work delivery. So that amount of control explains or demonstrate that there is contract of service, which means that they are actually the employee to the employer. Okay. So that is control test. For example, macam doktor ataupun nurses dekat hospital kan kerja berapa hari, berapa jam satu hari, ataupun macam kerja-kerja macam biasa yang selalu kita dengar, orang kerja dengan bank, orang kerja dengan whatever syarikat. So that's the example. Second one is the organization or integration test. The test is whether the work that a person performs is an integral or essential part of the organization. For example, I give you an example. One huge organization, their main business is producing cosmetic punya produk, okay? Produk-produk kecantikan kan. Yang sekarang ni semua orang tengah sibuk nak cantik kan. So jual bedak, jual lipstick, jual cuci muka, jual lah semua yang berkaitan dengan kosmetik, okay? So the company is very big. So they produce this beauty cosmetic punya produk. Okay. So in that company ada juga orang yang buat kerja cuci lantai, cuci tingkap, cuci tandas for example. Okay. So berbanding dengan orang yang handle production dekat kilang dan orang yang kerja cuci tandas yang jadi cleaner lah dekat company ni, who performs the integral or essential part of the business? If the answer is the one who's working at the production level, then the answer is correct, because without them there's no point of the business, because the core of the business is production of cosmetic products. Okay, but unfortunately, if for the cleaner, the employer can argue that they are not my employee because I have appointed another party via a contract to supply me with the cleaner, janitor for example kan, So if the negligence by the janitor, the company may excuse themselves from the vicarious liability. So that's the organization or integration test. Alright, and then multiple tests. Used when neither the control test nor the organization test can be satisfactorily applied to all cases. So the court can take a common sense approach and look at a combination of factors. 3 factors that need to be fulfilled before a contract of service is established. The contract agrees to use his expertise for a company's benefit in return for remuneration. Okay? The employee agrees to use his expertise for a company's benefit in return for remuneration. Secondly, he agrees to be bound by the company's rules or employer's instruction, and all other conditions in the agreement are consistent with the nature of the job being a contract of service. So this is a multiple test. Alright. So other factors that can be considered also when a person owns his own tools, okay, is paid in lump sum and considered himself as a self-employed person, he is likely to be an independent contractor. Contoh kalau macam rumah kita ada bocor-bocor, kita nak panggil plumber untuk betulkan, kan? So waktu tu menyebabkan kemalangan kecil, menyebabkan jiran sebelah rumah jiran pula jadi bocor ke, contohlah kan. So do we have to be responsible for that? Can we say that can the plumber say that, oh, tuan rumah ni adalah majikan saya because dia yang suruh saya datang buat kerja. So we can excuse ourselves from being vicariously liable by this kind of argument that no, this person, this plumber is actually an independent contractor. I called him to settle my issue with the water issue, plumbing system. So that is the argument that we can put forward in case we're in that situation. Okay. If he does not own the tools he uses and is only entitled to his salary, then he is an employee lah. Okay. So how do you explain further? How do you understand better the course of employment? Okay, so when an employee is doing what he is employed to do, his job is considered to be in the course of employment. Like I explained just now, I was doing I was delivering goods by driving the lorry. So on my way to deliver goods, I met into an accident. Okay, so that situation, I am in the course of employment. But later at night, I drive the lorry to go to kedai mamak, minum sekejap, jumpa kawan. That is no longer in the course of employment. Okay, so first you have to look into the closeness between the careless act and the employee's job. If a careless act is done while an employee is doing his job, it is considered to have occurred in the course of employment, like I explained just now. Second, unauthorized way of doing something authorized. Saya kena buat satu yang memang saya sepatutnya lakukan, tapi dengan cara yang salah, kan? So if the employee or worker commits a mistake in the course of performing his job, generally the court will hold the employer liable. So saya memang patutnya buat kerja tu, memang itulah kerja yang saya buat, tapi cara saya yang salah. So saya tak boleh so employer tak boleh kata, oh, I don't want to be included in this case. I don't want to be liable. So tak boleh, because while I was doing something not right, but that something not right is actually in the course of my employment. Okay. Contoh dia macam you buat kerja tu, tapi SOP you salah. So kerja tu tak siap dengan betul, menyebabkan kerusakan yang lain. So boleh tak employer kena vicarious liability? Boleh. Contoh I bagi macam ni. TNB punya orang yang tukang baca bil. Tugas dia untuk masuk rumah orang, bagi salam, nak check bil. Okay? Nak baca bil. Okay, so sepatutnya dia buka pagar elok-elok. Tapi dia panggil, tuan rumah tak buka pagar, dia didn't open the door. So he decided untuk lompat pagar tu, panjat pagar, lompat. Okay, macam tu lah lebih kurang. So bila dia dah lompat, mungkin menyebabkan pagar tu jadi rosak. Dia berat sangat ke, contohlah okay. So owner rumah tu tak puas hati, dia nak pergi saman. So dia nak saman tukang baca bil ni, dia pun nak saman TNB sekali sebagai majikan. So boleh tak TNB kata, oh, he is not in the course of employment because he didn't do the job correctly. So TNB cannot argue that way because although he was doing it uh, wrongly, however, he was still doing his job that was still as per assigned by his employer. So that is a simple example that I can give lah, okay? In the case of Samin bin Hassan and government of Malaysia, the plaintiff was knocked down by the defendant who was driving Telecom's car. The defendant has driven the vehicle back to his house and the accident occurred when he was on the way back to the office. The defendant stated that he brought the vehicle out to test the brake, but the brakes did not require any testing. So the court held that the employee did not vicariously liable. So who asked him to drove the car back to his house? What he was supposed to do is to return the car to the office, then only he can go back to his house. In his situation, he drove the car back to his house, then after that, after quite some time, then only he wants to return the car to the office. It's already beyond office hour. Okay, so he met into an accident. So should the company be vicariously liable? The answer is no, because it's already beyond, it's already out of cost of employment. Okay. Okay, so clear about vicarious liability, right? I assume you guys are clear about it lah. Okay. General defenses under tort. So if let's say you are being alleged for doing wrongful act under tort, what are the options of defenses that you can put forward to say that no, I am not wrong, or I am not 100% wrong. So what are the defenses that you have? So the first one is contributory negligence. So in situation dia macam ni, you are being alleged for being negligent, for breaching your duty of care. Okay, so tadi kan kita belajar, kita ada duty of care dengan your neighbour, ada neighbour principle. Okay, so you have been negligent, which have caused the plaintiff to suffer injury, maybe damages for about 100,000 ringgit. Okay, so you have to face the court. You have to defend yourself before the court. How are you going to say to the court that I admit that I made mistake, but I have to say that it's not 100% my mistake. I admit that I contributed. I admit that I was negligent, but there is also contributory negligence on the part of the plaintiff, which has caused the situation even worse. For example, kalau plaintiff tu tak contribute to the negligence, the damage should not be until 100,000. Maybe it just at 50,000 ringgit. But because the plaintiff has contributed to the negligence, then he has to suffer 100,000 worth of damages. So that is what it meant by contributory negligence. So it means that the plaintiff has failed to use reasonable care for the safety of himself or his property, which then give rise to his damage or injury. So this contributory negligence is a partial defense lah. Partial je. It means that if you put forward this defense, maybe instead of you have to bear the cost for 100,000 of compensation, maybe the court will consider 70% or 70,000 or 50,000 that you have to bear the cost for the compensation that you have to pay to the plaintiff. So it's not 100% defense. Okay, so you just reduce the amount of compensation payable to the plaintiff in proportion to his own contribution. Okay, depends lah. If let's say the court's punya valuation after that the plaintiff, if only the plaintiff has taken reasonable care for the safety of himself, maybe she or he will just suffer damage of 30,000 ringgit instead of 100,000 ringgit. So then 30,000 ringgit je lah that you have to bear. So it depends on the courts lah. Okay, so the defendant must plead contributory negligence of the plaintiff. You must plead. It means that you have to bring this point to the court that, dear Lord, my Lord, I would like to bring forward. There's also a point of contributory negligence on the part of the plaintiff, where the plaintiff has failed to take blah 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 action blah blah blah. So if you didn't plead, if you didn't bring this point to the court will not take this into consideration at all. So the court will not consider that there is any possibility of contributory negligence. So it's not at the court's punya consideration untuk rajinnya fikirkan for you whether or not there is contributory negligence. No. If you are serious about reducing the amount of compensation that you might have to pay, so you have to bring forward this contributory negligence. Okay, so this is covered under Section 12, Subsection 1 of the Civil Law Act 1956, where it says that where any person suffers damage as the result partly of his own fault and partly of the fault of any other person or persons, his claim shall not be defeated by reason of the fault, but damages recoverable shall be reduced having regard to the claimant's share in the responsibility of the damage. So it depends lah. Claimant tu plaintiff lah kan, orang yang menuntut. So claimant punya percentage yang contribute to the damage berapa? 70%, 30%, 50%. So the balance is that you have to cover. Okay, so that is contributory negligence. So the elements, the first one is that plaintiff have a duty of care upon himself to act reasonably so as to avoid damage to himself. Okay, contoh, saya bawa kereta, saya langgar penunggang motor, okay, cedera teruk, kepala dia berdarah, kena masuk ICU. Contohlah, okay. So, motorcyclist tu selesai dekat mahkamah for being negligent and being reckless in driving. So dia minta ganti rugi 50,000 ke atas kecederaan dan sakit kepala, masuk hospital, bla bla bla. So saya punya argument or contributory negligence punya defense is that I agree that I langgar dia on the road. However, what contribute to his damages is that he did not wear helmet, so, which caused him to injure his head severely. Kalau saya langgar with that speed, he should not be badly injured lah. Maybe dia hanya luka-luka sikit je, tapi sebab dia tak pakai helmet, so hentakan tu kena kat kepala dia. So that is the example of contributory negligence, which the plaintiff has a duty of care upon himself to act reasonably. He has a duty of care to wear helmet to make sure that he is safe while using his motorcycle. Okay. Secondly, plaintiff has failed to take reasonable care of himself by behaving unreasonably. Okay. So dia dah fail. Tadi dia ada duty of care to wear helmet. Now he has failed to wear helmet. So failed to take reasonable care. Okay, by behaving unreasonably. Unreasonably, that is by not wearing helmet. Okay, third one is the act or omission must be the cause of his injury, which is reasonably foreseeable from his act or omission. So in this case, omission lah, he omit to wear helmet. They fail to wear helmet, okay? So which has caused the injury, and it's foreseeable that failing to wear helmet can cause bad injury to his head. Okay, I think I'm giving you a simple example for you to understand, okay? Okay, in this case of Jones and Livox Quarries Limited, the plaintiff disobeyed his employer's instruction by riding at the back of a track excavator. Another vehicle hit the back of the track excavator and the plaintiff was injured. So the court held that the plaintiff is guilty of contributory negligence. A person is guilty of contributory negligence if he ought to have foreseen that if he did not act as a reasonable man, he might get hurt. Yelah, siapa suruh kau panjat belakang excavator tu kan? Employer dia tak suruh, tapi dia panjat juga. So, dia dah patutnya boleh fikir dah, kalau dia panjat ni mungkin dia akan cedera ataupun bahaya boleh berlaku. But he failed. Okay? So, contributory negligence is proof the person guilty of it must bear the proper share of responsibility for the consequences. So the plaintiff suffered damage as a result partly of his own fault. Okay. contoh case lah. You can read later lah kan. Baca sendiri. I think in terms of explanation, I have given you simple example for you to understand. Okay. Second defense is voluntary non-fit injuria. What is this? So Latin word. It means it's a Latin maxim which means that to which a man consents cannot be considered an injury. You have agreed to take the risk, and suddenly when you injured after taking the risk, then you want to sue the defendant. So is it doable? It's not. You cannot do that. It means that in case you are the defendant in this case and the plaintiff has consented to take the risk to do certain activities, then if he get injured and he wants to sue you, you can stand forward and say, hello, this particular plaintiff has agreed to absorb and to take all the risks. He has consented to all the risks before he joined the activity. So I should not be responsible and liable for the damage that he has suffered. That's the example lah. Okay, that's why, for example, if you go to parking area, mana-mana parking area, sometimes you can see dia ada apa tu? What we call that? Papan tanda. Okay, signboard says that park at your own risk. Okay, park at your own risk. After you park the car, you pergi melawati mall, for example, you park the car, and then after you park the car, you pergi shopping. 2 hours later you came back. Oh, kereta you cermin dah pecah, barang dalam kereta dah hilang. And then you walk to the management, you say, I want you to be responsible for failing to provide sufficient guards to make sure that my car is safe when parked at your premise. Can you do that? What is the argument from the defendant or from the shopping complex punya management? The shopping complex punya management will say, dear sir, we already put there the papan tanda park at your own risk. So when you decide to park your car, you have consented to absorb whatever risk on that could happen to your car. Okay, that is the example lah. So there are 3 requirements to invoke the defense of voluntary non-fit injuria. The first one, the plaintiff consent to the risk of injury. Plaintiff sign a consent form, for example. Okay, contoh you main paragliding, whatever lah, adventurous punya sports yang berbahaya. Usually, the sport operator tu akan suruh you sign form that whatever risk jadi apa-apa dekat you sanggup untuk absorb the risk, sanggup untuk tanggung risiko. Okay. Second, the consent or assumption of risk must be voluntary. Must be voluntary lah, tak boleh by force. And the plaintiff has full knowledge of the nature and extent of the risk of injury. When you park the car, you know what is the extent of the risk. Maybe kereta you kena pecah, tayar you kena pancit, kereta you kena langgar, for example. So when you choose to play paragliding ke apa, maybe there's a risk of you terjatuh ke. Bila you terjatuh tu kaki you patah ke, you know what are the risks. So you must have the full knowledge for this for the activity in order for the defendant to use this defense. Okay. Contoh macam kes ni, Woolrich and Sumner. The plaintiff was a spectator come photographer in a horse racing competition. So you know horse racing. So when he was doing photographing work, spectator, he sustained some injury when one of the horses skidded whilst turning a corner and terlajak sikit lah. So kuda ni very heavy tau. So it caused injury on this guy lah, the photographer. So the court held that defendant was not liable as he had taken reasonable precautions and had discharged his duty of care satisfactorily. Dia dah ada apa tu, border tu semua kan, all the to separate the area lah between the horse to ride and also the penonton kan. So basically reasonable precaution has been taken by the defendant. And a spectator of a game or competition is assumed to have taken the risk of injury to himself as a result of the actions of the players. So especially when he is involved in that kind of job, horse riding, definitely he should have understand that the risk of the horse could have skidded, which might have caused injury to other people. So those are the situation. Okay. Okay, this is the example where defense of volunteer is not acceptable or is rejected. Okay, the plaintiff was a member of physical training class run by the defendant, macam gym lah kan, physical training class and yoga punya class macam tu lah lebih kurang. So during one session when the members were lunging at one another, the plaintiff lost his balance and injured himself. Okay, so while doing the activity, the plaintiff injured himself. So it turned out that the floor was slippery due to the defendant's negligence. Okay, but the defendant tried to use this defense of volunteer. So the court held that if the plaintiff had sustained injuries as a consequence of the physical exercise, his claim would be failed. However, the assumption of risk did not include conducting exercise on a slippery floor. So he knows that if he conduct the exercise, he does the exercise, there is a possibility or risk that he will fall down and injure himself. However, that risk is not including the risk to conduct exercise on a slippery floor. So this slippery floor ni, the organizer ataupun the defendant has the duty of care to make sure that the floor is safe for people to use, for his customer to practice or to conduct physical training. Okay, so the defense of volunteer is rejected. Okay, I think this is the last defense is inevitable accident. So this inevitable accident ni suatu yang tak sangka akan berlaku lah, macam tu lah lebih kurang. Okay, yang tak boleh nak dielakkan, yang terpaksa. Okay, so the defense of inevitable accident, it requires the defendant to prove that the cause of the accident and the result is inevitable. Tak boleh nak elak lah. It must be something which is not avoidable by any such precaution as a reasonable man could be expected to take. Defendant must prove that what happened is beyond his control and could not be avoided by the exercise of skill and case. Example, latent defect in the vehicle. Okay, contohnya macam in a car accident dekat jalan raya, biasanya kita bawa kereta dengan elok kan, tenang, and then tiba-tiba ada kereta dari laluan arah satu lagi, dia dah melambung masuk dalam jalan kita. So we have no choice, we have to avoid this car by hitting the car in front of us. Macam itulah lebih kurang. So it's inevitable. I cannot avoid from langgar kereta depan because I have been pushed by the situation where kalau I tak langgar kereta depan, I akan mati sebab kena kereta yang dah masuk laluan I ni. Macam itulah lebih kurang. Okay, so it's an inevitable. So if you can prove that, you can bring a defense lah, basically, to reduce the amount of damages ataupun to exclude 100%. Okay. Yes. Thank you. I think kita dah habis dah untuk kelas for today. Is there any question before I ask you question? You better ask me question. Any question?